There are people who clean their house every single day and still feel like their mind is complete chaos. They wake up tired, forget things, live rushing around, and feel like they never finish anything. And the problem is not always a lack of time. Many times, it is a lack of silent order. Because there is a type of organization that nobody sees, yet it completely changes how a life feels. And today I want to share with you 7 little-known habits that are helping many people live with more calm, more mental clarity, and less daily exhaustion. The most curious thing is that the calmest people are usually not the ones who do the most things. They are the ones who learned to eliminate the invisible chaos that was stealing their energy every day. So if lately you feel like your mind never rests, I want you to comment the word order. Because believe me, many women are living exactly like this and do not even know where to begin. And pay attention, because at the end of the video I'm going to tell you a real story that a neighbor named Sandra told me. The most curious part is that everything started with a tiny detail inside her house that she ignored for years, until she realized that it was affecting her far more than she had ever imagined. The first silent organization habit is to stop starting the day reacting. And this completely changed the lives of many people who were mentally exhausted from early in the morning. There are women who open their eyes and the first thing they do is look at messages, news, pending tasks, problems, or social media. And the brain automatically enters stress mode before they even get out of bed. Truly organized people do something different. Before touching their phone, they take a few minutes to organize their mind. Some pray. Others write down what they need to do. Others simply remain in silence. But they all have something in common. They start the day from calm, not from chaos. And here is something very important. Many times, exhaustion does not begin because of everything you do during the day, but because of how you begin your morning. Because if the first thing your mind receives is worry, hurry, and noise, the brain spends the rest of the day feeling like everything is urgent. And little by little, that becomes a rushed life where true peace never seems to exist. There are people who have not even properly gotten out of bed and already feel anxiety. They are already thinking about problems, messages, pending tasks, or things that have not even happened yet. And the body begins the day completely tense without realizing it. That is why many women feel tired even when the morning is only beginning. But something changes when a person decides to protect those first minutes of the day. There is no need to wake up at 5 in the morning or have perfect routines. It is enough to wake up more consciously, breathe slowly, say a short prayer, drink water calmly. Think about what truly matters today. They are small things, but they teach the brain that the day does not have to begin with stress. And although it may seem like a tiny detail, it greatly changes the way a person thinks, responds, and organizes their day. Because a peaceful morning usually creates a more peaceful mind. And the next habit has a lot to do with that, because it is one of the reasons why so many people feel like they are constantly putting out fires all the time. The second habit is making decisions before you need them. People who live mentally exhausted usually spend the day improvising everything. What they are going to cook, what clothes they will wear, where they left something important, which task they should do first. And although these may seem like small decisions, the brain becomes extremely worn out when it constantly has to solve things in a hurry. Silently organized people do something very different. They prepare small things ahead of time so they do not have to live rushing afterward. They leave certain clothes ready. They write down important tasks. They prepare what they need for the following morning. They even decide in advance which tasks will be the most important of the day. And that gives them a very different sense of mental order. Because here is something that almost nobody understands. Mental exhaustion does not always appear because of doing too much. Many times, it appears because of having to decide too much all the time. And the worst part is that many people have already become used to living like this. They wake up improvising, spend the day solving things at the last minute, and end up exhausted without understanding why if they didn't even do that much. But the brain feels that wear and tear. Every small decision consumes mental energy. And when a person lives making decisions in a hurry, they begin to feel irritation, anxiety, and even difficulty concentrating on simple things. That is why many women feel completely drained at night even when they have not done anything physically demanding. In fact, Something very curious about the calmest people is that they try to reduce unnecessary chaos before it even appears. They do not wait until they are rushed to organize themselves. They get slightly ahead of things. And that greatly changes how the day feels. Because the brain stops living in a constant sense of emergency. And although it may seem like a small detail, deciding some things ahead of time gives the mind enormous rest. It makes the day feel lighter, clearer, and less rushed. And the next habit has a lot to do with that, with learning to give the brain real pauses during the day so you do not live mentally exhausted all the time. The third habit is leaving empty spaces between activities. And this is something that almost nobody teaches. Many women spend every minute of the day occupied. They finish one thing and are already thinking about the next. They cook while thinking about what still needs cleaning. They talk to someone while checking something else. They even rest while feeling guilty about everything still pending. And little by little, the mind becomes used to living accelerated all the time. And the problem is that many people have already normalized living this way. Feeling rushed. Eating quickly. Doing several things at the same time. Never truly stopping. But the brain was not designed to constantly switch from one task to another without rest. And when it lives like that for too long, that feeling of mental overload appears, the one that so many women feel today. But people with calmer lives do something very different. They leave small spaces of pause between activities. 5 or 10 minutes without rushing. A peaceful coffee. Sitting down for a moment before starting another task. Breathing. Walking slowly. Because the brain needs transition. It needs to feel that one thing ended before beginning another. And although it may seem simple, those small moments greatly reduce the feeling of mental chaos. Because when a person lives accelerated all day long, even the smallest tasks begin to feel emotionally heavy. On the other hand, when they learn to slow down at times, the day stops feeling like an endless race. In fact, many women feel enormous peace simply when they stop doing everything in a hurry. Because they discover that it was not only physical exhaustion. It was a mind that had gone too long without truly resting. But the most interesting part comes now, because the next habit may be directly related to that feeling of anxiety that many people feel inside their own home without understanding why. The fourth habit is finishing small things immediately. And this seems very simple, but it has an enormous impact on the feeling of daily chaos. There are people who constantly accumulate small pending things. Messages left unanswered. Papers on the table. Something they left for later. A pending phone call. An open drawer. Small things that seem unimportant, but the brain still registers them. And here is the problem. The mind does not easily forget what remains incomplete. Even if you are not consciously thinking about it, the brain keeps those pending things active in the background. And when too many accumulate, that feeling of mental exhaustion appears, the one many women feel even on days where apparently they did not do that much. Because exhaustion often does not come from one big responsibility. It comes from carrying too many small open things at the same time. Simple pending matters that the brain continues remembering silently throughout the day. And the more they accumulate, the stronger the feeling of mental disorder becomes. Silently organized people develop a very different habit. They close small cycles quickly. They put something away as soon as they finish using it. They write something down before forgetting it. They answer simple pending matters immediately. And although these seem like tiny actions, they create an incredible sense of mental lightness. Because little by little, the mind stops feeling like everything is half done. In fact, many women feel huge relief when they start resolving small things immediately and stop accumulating unnecessary pending matters. Because the brain stops living with that constant feeling that something is still missing. And when that mental pressure decreases, more clarity, more calm, and even more patience appear throughout the day. And the next habit has a lot to do with that. With learning to take care not only of the physical space, but also of everything that enters your mind daily. And if up to this point you are identifying with this, subscribe to the channel, because this kind of content is not only about organization. It is about recovering mental peace in a world where too many people live mentally overwhelmed all the time. Now I want to talk to you about a habit that probably many people would never connect with organization. And even so, it can completely transform how a life feels. The fifth habit is reducing the emotional noise that enters your mind every day. There are women who spend hours listening to negative news, other people's problems, arguments, social media, or conversations that only generate anxiety. And even if they do not notice it, all of that ends up overwhelming the mind much more than they imagine. Because just as a house feels heavy when it accumulates too many things, the mind also feels heavy when it accumulates too much negative information. And the problem is that many people have become so used to emotional noise that they believe living tense, worried, or mentally exhausted is normal. There are women who wake up and the first thing they do is listen to problems, alarming news, stressful messages, family gossip, social media filled with comparison and negativity. And the brain starts the day carrying emotions that do not even belong to them. Little by little, that creates irritation, anxiety, mental exhaustion, and a constant feeling of overload. But people with more inner calm do something very different. They learn to choose what they allow into their mind every day. They do not consume just anything all the time. They do not fill themselves with other people's problems first thing in the morning. They do not live focused on every negative thing that appears on their phone. And that greatly changes how they feel throughout the day. Because the mind also needs cleaning. It needs silence. It needs emotional rest. And something very curious is that many women feel enormous relief simply when they stop exposing themselves so much to unnecessary noise. They even sleep better, think more clearly, feel less irritated, more emotionally light. And here is something very important. Protecting your mental peace is not selfish. It is learning to take care of your emotional energy the same way you take care of your house or your health. Because when the mind lives surrounded by noise for too long, there comes a moment when even small things begin to feel heavy. Now get ready, because the next habit is one of the most powerful and also one of the least practiced nowadays. The sixth habit is having a silent routine that nobody knows about. And there is something deeply special about this. The most emotionally balanced people usually have small invisible habits that support their daily calm. Simple things, but repeated consistently. Preparing the day the night before. Writing down pending tasks before sleeping. Walking a few minutes in silence. Drinking coffee without television. Reviewing expenses once a week. They are small rituals, but they give stability to the brain. Because while chaos creates a feeling of disorder and pressure, gentle routines create a feeling of safety. And that is something many people need today without even realizing it. Having small moments that repeat and tell the mind, everything is okay. You do not need to run all the time. And something very curious is that the calmest people usually protect those small rituals very carefully. Because they know a large part of their emotional stability is there. There are women who have the habit of opening the windows every morning before starting the day. Others write down everything that worries them before sleeping so they do not go to bed with an overwhelmed mind. Some leave a few minutes of silence before sleeping because they understood that the mind also needs to slow down little by little. And although from the outside these things may seem insignificant, the brain loves that feeling of repeated order. It loves knowing that peaceful moments exist during the day. Because when everything in life feels unpredictable or rushed, those small habits become something similar to an emotional refuge. The interesting thing is that the calmest people usually do not have perfect lives. They simply have silent habits that help them stay centered even when the day becomes complicated. And the most curious thing is that they almost never talk about it. They do not post it. They do not try to prove anything. They simply live those small rituals in silence because they understood that true calm does not need anyone's approval. And that connects perfectly with the final habit. Probably the most important of all. The seventh habit is stopping the attempt to change your entire life all at once. Truly organized people do not live starting over every Monday or making extreme changes that last only a few days. Because they understood something very important. Peace is not built overnight. It is built slowly, through small actions repeated with calm and consistency. Many women live exhausted because they feel like they always need to start over. On Monday, they create a perfect routine. They clean the entire house. They decide to wake up early, eat healthier, organize everything, quit bad habits, and completely transform their life. But a few days later, they feel tired, frustrated, and guilty again. And the problem is not lack of ability. It is wanting to transform an entire life too quickly. And this happens a lot today. People watch videos where everything seems to change in one day and feel that they should also be able to do the same. They see perfect houses, perfect routines, and apparently perfect lives. And without realizing it, they begin demanding impossible changes from themselves, changes that are emotionally impossible to maintain. But reality almost never works that way. The changes that truly last usually begin much more quietly, more silently, more humanly. Because an organized life is not built in one moment of motivation. It is built on ordinary days. In the small repeated decisions made when nobody is watching. That is where a life truly changes. Not when a person cleans the entire house in one desperate day, but when they begin creating small habits that slowly provide stability. People with more calm do something very different. They do not try to fix everything at the same time. They focus on small but sustainable changes. One habit at a time. One small improvement each day. Because they understood that an organized life does not suddenly appear. It forms when a person begins respecting their energy, their time, and their peace daily. And here is something very important that many women need to hear. Resting is also part of order. Moving more slowly is also part of order. Stopping the demand for perfection is also part of order. Because many people live believing that organizing their life means doing more and more things, when many times what they truly need is to stop pressuring themselves so much. There are women who have spent years living as if they are always behind in life, always trying to catch up with something, always feeling guilty for what they did not do, and little by little, that turns into constant emotional exhaustion. That is why the calmest people are not necessarily the most productive. Many times, they are simply the ones who stopped fighting against time all day long. And something very curious happens when a person stops trying to change everything all at once. They begin enjoying small progress much more. A peaceful morning, a less chaotic week, an organized space, sleeping with less anxiety. Simple things that little by little begin changing completely how life feels. Because women who live with more calm do not necessarily have fewer problems. They simply stopped feeding the unnecessary chaos that used to mentally exhaust them. They stopped running all the time. They stopped demanding perfection from themselves. And they began building a lighter, slower, and much calmer life. And honestly, I believe this is something many people need to hear today. You do not need to transform your entire life this week. You do not need to become a perfect person tomorrow. Sometimes the only thing you need is to stop living at war with yourself every single day. Because in the end, true silent organization is not about having a perfect life. It is about creating a life that no longer makes you feel exhausted every day. And as promised, now I'm going to tell you my neighbor's story. It is a very interesting story and I'm sure it will make you think. Sandra was a very calm woman on the outside. Always well-dressed, kind to everyone, responsible, one of those people who seem to have life under control. She lived alone since her children had left home, and many times when I saw her, she would say something that at first sounded completely normal. Lately I've been living tired. And of course, people think it is age, stress, or simply the rhythm of life. But over time, I started noticing something strange about her. She was always rushed. She constantly forgot small things. Sometimes she would leave and then come back because she could not remember whether she had locked the door. Other times she told me she sat down to rest but still felt her head full of noise all the time. One day she invited me to have coffee at her house, and that was when I understood that something was not right. It was not a dirty house. In fact, it was relatively organized. But it felt heavy. There were too many things everywhere. Papers on the table. The television turned on even though nobody was watching it. The phone constantly ringing with notifications. Lists attached to the refrigerator. Medicine bottles on the kitchen counter. Everything seemed small and insignificant. But together it created a strange feeling, as if the house never truly rested. While we were talking, Sandra did something that caught my attention immediately. She stood up 3 times in less than 10 minutes because she had just remembered something. First it was some documents, then a pending phone call. After that, because she forgot to turn something off in the kitchen. And suddenly she told me something that honestly I have never forgotten. She said, "I feel like my mind never becomes quiet." And in that moment I understood that the problem was not a lack of physical organization. It was that she had spent years living in a constant state of alert without realizing it. The most curious part came a few weeks later. Sandra told me that one night she woke up at 3 in the morning, convinced that she had forgotten something important. She quickly went downstairs to check the entire house, and absolutely nothing had happened. But at that moment she stood still in the middle of the living room and realized something powerful. Her house was never silent. There was always noise. The television, the phone, visible pending tasks, accumulated objects, papers in sight, open things. Her mind never rested because her environment never rested either. And that was when she started changing small things. She did not make an extreme transformation. She did not remodel the house or buy organizers. She started with something much simpler. She stopped sleeping with the television on. She removed unnecessary things from surfaces. She began finishing small pending tasks before going to bed. She started waking up 10 minutes earlier so she would not rush from the very beginning of the morning. And most importantly, she began having real moments of silence during the day. A few weeks later, she invited me for coffee again. And honestly, I felt the difference the moment I walked into her house. Everything felt lighter, calmer. But the most impressive thing was not the house. It was her. She spoke more slowly. She looked less exhausted. She even smiled more. And while we were drinking coffee, she told me something I still remember perfectly. I thought I needed a vacation, but what I really needed was to stop living in chaos all the time. And I believe many people are living exactly like that without realizing it. They think they are tired because of age, work, or problems, when in reality they have spent years mentally overwhelmed. Because disorder is not always things thrown on the floor. Many times it is constant noise, open pending tasks, rushing, information overload, and a mind that never experiences real silence. That is why silent organization changes life so much. Because it is not only about organizing spaces. It is about giving calm back to the mind. And when a person begins living with less noise, less hurry, and more intention, even the body begins to feel different. So if this video spoke directly to you, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel, because here we will continue learning together how to build a calmer, more organized, and emotionally lighter life, without falling into perfectionism, stress, or constant exhaustion. Because today more than ever, many women need to stop merely surviving in constant acceleration and start feeling peace inside their own life again. And now I want to read you in the comments. Tell me which of these habits you feel you need the most right now. Because one beautiful thing about this space is discovering that many times we are not the only ones feeling this way. And believe me, sometimes one small silent change can transform far more than we ever imagined.